Welcome back to the channel. Today I pulled a summer issue of Foreign Affairs. Those of you who've listened to me discuss articles from Foreign Affairs in the past on the channel, a lot of times I'm mostly quite irritated by what they have to say. These are people with whom I disagree on many things in life, not just foreign affairs. But sometimes the articles can be really helpful to start discussions, like the one that I did on depopulation. If you're interested in that, I'll put a link in the description as well as a card. But the article I'm targeting is called The End of the Long American Century. The subtitle is Trump and the Sources of U.S. Power. So let's see what we can learn from part of this article. And I'll put a link in the description. Always keep in mind, if you don't have a Foreign Affairs subscription, you can always unlock one article for free by giving them an email address. I don't think you can get a second article for free, but if you've never unlocked a Foreign Affairs article, I don't know that I would use it on this one, but if you're interested enough, I'll put the link in the description. Threatening to bar or limit imports can successfully exert pressure on trading partners. In terms of asymmetric interdependence and power, the United States is in a favorable bargaining position with all 7 of its most important trading partners. Its trade is extremely asymmetric with China, Mexico, and the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, which is ASEAN, all of which have an export to import ratio of more than 2 to 1 with the United States. For Japan, roughly 1.8 to 1, South Korea 1.4 to 1, and the European Union 1.6 to 1, those ratios are also asymmetric. Canada enjoys a more balanced ratio of around 1.2 to 1. The Trump administration misses a major dimension of power. Power is the ability to get others to do what you want. This goal can be accomplished by coercion, payment, or attraction. The first 2 are hard power. The third is soft power. In the short term, hard power usually trumps soft power. But over the long term, soft power often prevails. Joseph Stalin is thought to once have mockingly asked, "How many divisions does the Pope have?" But the Soviet Union is long gone, and the papacy lives on. The president seems inordinately committed to coercion and the exercise of American hard power, but he does not seem to understand soft power or its role in foreign policy. Coercing democratic allies such as Canada or Denmark more broadly weakens trust in U.S. alliances. Threatening Panama reawakens fears of imperialism throughout Latin America. Crippling USAID undercuts the United States' reputation for benevolence. You see right there, there's an example of something that's totally wrong. USAID is a cancer on the world. Silencing the voice of America mutes the country's message. Skeptics say, so what? International politics is hardball, not softball. And Trump's coercive and transactional approach is already producing concessions with the promise of more to come. As Machiavelli once wrote about power, it is better for a prince to be feared than loved, but it is better yet to be both feared and loved. Power has 3 dimensions, and by ignoring attraction, Trump is neglecting a key source of American strength. In the long run, it is a losing strategy. And we know this just instinctively as humans. If you think that the main way that you're going to get employees to stay with your company or volunteers to stay with your project is by coercing them or paying them off and never attracting them to your cause, never attracting them to your company, you're wrong. People leave, and they leave acrimoniously at times, and then you've got to start all over again instead of having long-term players. And in the game of nations, it would make more sense to have long-term friends who you build something with, not short-term partners who you've bullied or coerced into doing something because you're the stronger partner. Soft power matters even in the short run. If a country is attractive, it won't need to rely as much on incentives and penalties to shape the behavior of others. If allies see it as benign and trustworthy, they are more persuadable and likely to follow that country's lead, although admittedly they may maneuver to take advantage of a benign stance by the more powerful state. Faced with bullying, they may comply, but if they see their trading partner as an unreliable bully, they are more likely to drag their feet and reduce their long-term interdependence when they can. Cold War Europe offers a good example of this dynamic. In 1986, the Norwegian analyst Geir Lundestad described the world as divided into a Soviet and an American empire. Whereas the Soviets had used force to build their European satrapies, the American side was an empire by invitation. The Soviets had to send troops into Budapest in 1956 and Prague in 1968 to keep the governments there subordinate to Moscow. By contrast, NATO remained strong throughout the Cold War. And that's true. At least before Trump's second term began, China lagged far behind the United States in the court of global public opinion. Pew surveyed 24 countries in 2023 and reported that a majority of respondents in most of them found the United States more attractive than China, with Africa the only continent where the results were even close. More recently, in May 2024, Gallup found that in 133 countries it surveyed, the United States had the advantage in 81 and China in 52. If Trump keeps undercutting American soft power, however, these numbers may change markedly. For its part, China is striving to fill any gaps that Trump creates. It sees itself as the leader of the so-called Global South. It aims to displace the American order of international alliances and institutions. Its Belt and Road Infrastructure investment program is designed not only to attract other countries, but also to provide hard economic power. More countries have China as their largest trading partner than have the United States as such. If Trump thinks he can compete with China while weakening trust among American allies, asserting imperial aspirations, destroying USAID, challenging the rule of law at home, and withdrawing from UN agencies, he is likely to be disappointed. And I think this is what's important to realize is the American people have a built-in hostility to Russia and China because we just accept whatever our government tells us. Russia bad, China bad. We don't visit those countries very much as citizens. And as such, we just take whatever the government and the media tells us to be true. But the reality is most of the world doesn't buy the United States rhetoric on these countries. As you can see, as anyone who has eyes can see, Russia has continued to meet with the rest of the world, despite the so-called coalition of the West, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, excluding, quote unquote, excluding Russia. Russia is welcomed in many other places. And the same with China. America has tried to wage war with China recently. Trump tried to do it in his first term, losing now in his second term. You can lie to the American people about China and Russia, and I'm not trying to say China and Russia are amazing and wonderful in every possible way. I haven't yet been to Russia. I have been to China. So I have some other backup to the way that I think about it, other than just what the government tells me. But the idea that they are this evil threat that is going to take over our country, don't buy it for a second. Or that they're interested in threatening our sphere of control in this hemisphere, I don't believe that either. But the point is that whatever the president can say or any president that comes after him, they don't rule the rest of the world as much as they would like to. And so those other countries have a chance to engage with China and Russia on their own, and they make their own decisions. So it doesn't matter if the United States is going around saying China bad, Russia bad. The other countries have to believe it. And if their real life experience doesn't reinforce this idea that China bad, Russia bad, then they won't act that way. And I think this is what's problematic about the president, and really I think that's all I want to talk about today, is there's not a vision of a mixed approach. The way that you might with your friends, if you have children, I don't have children, I have nieces and nephews, but you can't use a one-size-fits-all approach to them. They have different personalities. They have different backgrounds. And so when they do something good or bad, you have to think about how to reinforce or correct in a way that makes sense for their personality, their upbringing, their parents. So too with nations. We can't just say we're going to do this to everybody, friend or foe. We have to think, what's our history with Japan? What's our history with Burundi? What's our history with South Africa? What's our history with Russia? And use those complex realities to then negotiate, whether it's on defense, whether it's on the Arctic, whether it's on trade in general. You have to look at each nation as a collection of those peoples, as opposed to we're just going to do this and you're going to like it or not because we're the strong person in the room. Bullies do not generally do well in this life and then in the life after. And when we're talking about nations, we're talking about legacy as well. And so what the president is doing and has done, here it is his second term, we're about a year in, And many of us are just counting down until when it's over and hoping that something terrible doesn't happen in the meantime. But part of it is this inability of the president to have any sort of subtlety in foreign affairs, which is probably where it's needed more than anything. And as such, we have this one size fits all approach. Now we're blockading Venezuela. The rest of the world is not buying into the lies that we have that we're putting forth about Venezuela. Everybody knows this is Iraq 2.0. There's weapons of mass destruction. Hezbollah's in there, whatever lies they're going to tell us. And so that's the reason that we're going to take over. And people are in for a big surprise if they think this is going to be some cakewalk. Venezuela is much larger than Iraq. We're talking about jungle. We're not talking about desert. And Maduro is handing out weapons to his people. Is this somebody who's a tyrant, who's afraid he's about to be overthrown by his own people? No, you don't hand out weapons to a populace that you're afraid of. So this is a populace that is opposed to an American invasion of their country. So despite all the sanctions that have happened to the Venezuelans, they don't want to be taken over by the Americans and their set of economic hitmen. So I think that should tell people a lot, that despite having the superior Navy and Air Force, which is the only way they're not going to invade Venezuela by land. They don't have the resources to do that. It'll be sort of a Vietnam in our hemisphere. They're just hoping for some kind of decapitation strike. And by the time this video comes out, maybe it'll be over already. But I think it goes back to the fact that the president has no moral center. He has no deeply held beliefs. So he's interested in something until he's interested in something else. He gets bored very easily. He doesn't care about solving things. He cares about photo ops. And if the photo op isn't possible, he'll move on to something else. But how this relates to trade and how it relates to the game of nations, the United States is being run by a very incompetent leader in foreign affairs at the moment. And that may not change. Whoever comes next may be just as incompetent as the president, although it's a pretty low bar. I don't think it's possible to be worse at it than President Trump is, but we'll see. 2026 is just around the corner, and we'll all discover this together. Anyway, if you'd like to get a copy of the article, I think most of it is not worth reading, but as I said, I just wanted to share a couple points. I don't agree with the authors on many things. And I've finished up with my own subscription to Foreign Affairs just because I want to focus on other things in the new year. But if you'd like to get a copy of the article, as I said, you can use a free one-time unlock in the description. If you enjoyed this review, hit like, subscribe. It's one way that you can support the channel. If you'd like to thank me for this presentation, links to buy me a coffee and PayPal are below. If you'd like to get early releases of videos like this one, as well as an exclusive once a month video behind the scenes Q&A, you will find links to YouTube membership and Patreon in the description. You'll also find a link to my Amazon wish list. If you'd like to see a book on that wish list reviewed, simply buy it and send it my way, and I'll do my best to review it in a timely manner. You'll also see books on Palestine. That's for my Palestine Bookshelf project. If you want to head over to that channel and check it out, I would welcome you to do so. Until next time, enjoy your reading.